Call to order this February 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Town Council of Centreville. We'll start as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if folks could remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Council has the minutes from January 19th in their packet. Is there a motion to adopt or any changes need to be made?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the closed session statement. The Town Council met in closed session on Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 at 6:15 p.m. at the Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, second floor meeting room, to discuss personnel in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. 4 members of the Town Council voted to close the session. The authority to close the session is found in Section 3-305 of the General Provisions article. The Town Council discussed the following topics. Personnel. We discussed the performance of an employee. No actions were taken. The following members and staff were present. Stephen K. Klein, President. Ashley H. Kaiser, Vice President. Daniel B. Worth and Jim A. Beecham, members. Sharon Van Emberg, Town Attorney. Charles Chip Kugel, Town Manager. And Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk. The meeting adjourned at 6:48 p.m. We'll now move into our Citizens Forum. There are no names on the list, but if anybody from the public would like to speak, come on up.
Good evening.
How are you?
Okay.
He's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
I'll just stand up.
Why don't you tell us your name and where you live?
You know where I live.
I do.
Joe Brown. I live in 122 Concerto Avenue in Centreville. So I missed the last meeting, but I'm looking at the agenda here, and I just see a whole bunch of actions that look like you're going to be discussing tonight. I just wonder, what is the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? You know, why are we doing this? So,
Why are we doing,
all these resolutions, charter amendments and everything, what's the reason for that?
there's a lot of charter cleanup.
It looks like new stuff to me,
There's a,
like not different from what we've had. So I'm just wondering what's the,
some of it is clarifying the chief of police's supervisory reporting structure. There is, do you want to speak to this stuff, Chip?
Yeah, so these are cleanups, the merit system, and making sure we are, and classified positions are both putting folks that are on payroll or in the employ of the town, having them properly classified within the charter and code. These are all cleanup things.
are we changing any provisions or how we hire or how many
No,
people
this is
we
just
have, or-
just amending the language.
Did
So
we have a merit system before?
we did.
We didn't use that terminology in the charter, did we?
I'd have to look at the charter back.
What's that?
I'd have to reread.
I
and
think
go back.
it mostly
was.
reflects what we're really doing, okay? And that, the language was not like charter, you're probably right about that, but,
We had used,
You know,
but
but we've been doing
used a
it,
merit,
and we-
merit system, but it wasn't termed that way.
right, so we're just trying to
Yeah, I mean,
codify,
I know we
make
always
sure.
had steps, we had classifications of steps.
Yeah,
Yes.
they had
But
that for
we
like,
didn't talk about merit and all that kind of stuff.
right.
But it is,
Sounds
Our
like
human
it's
resources
something to
manager says we've always had a merit-based system.
But
Our HR manager says we've always had a merit-based system.
we've always had what?
A merit-based system.
But we didn't call it by that name.
Yes, we did.
Is that way in the charter?
Yes,
Yes, it
it's-
is.
The section's titled that in the charter currently. I believe the only change in this bill is to rename it from Commissioner of State Personnel to Office of Personnel Services and Benefits, and that's because that's what that office is actually called at the
It's
state.
been a while since I looked at the charter, but haven't really had a need to, but just makes me wonder what purpose is.
Nothing nefarious here, Joe. Nothing nefarious.
Nothing substantive. Oh.
Nothing what?
Substantive.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd like to thank the HR manager for that on-the-fly clarification. All right, we will now move into a public hearing. We will start with public hearing for Resolution 1-2023. The subject of this hearing is Resolution 1-2023 for the purpose of amending the town charter to revise the reporting structure for the chief of police. I will now ask Ms. Van Emberg to provide background on Resolution 1-2023.
Not sure that there's much more background needed other than it's to change the reporting structure to clarify that the chief of police will now be under the supervision of the town manager.
Thank you. I will now call upon Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk, to present evidence of the published notice of this hearing.
Certificate of Publication, State of Maryland, County of Queen Anne's. This is to certify that the annexed legal advertisement has been published in the publications and insertions of the 1/13/2023 Bay Times Record Observer.
Thank you. We will first hear from all those in favor of proposed Resolution 1-2023, and then we will hear from those who are opposed to Resolution 1-2023. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes. You are welcome to provide written testimony to the town council as well. Would the clerk like to read the public comment guidelines?
Sure. Welcome to this meeting of the Centreville Town Council. This is a public meeting and we welcome your participation. By attending, you acknowledge that this session is recorded and aired live on QACTV 7. During the meeting, we ask that you turn your cell phones off and hold personal conversations outside the meeting room. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The Town Council respects and appreciates your desire and right to convey your message freely, and in keeping with the dignity of proceedings, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. If questions are a part of your comments, we'll refer those to the appropriate individual. Thank you.
We will now hear from all those in favor of proposed Resolution 1-2023. We will now hear from all those opposing proposed Resolution 1-2023. The Centreville Town Council will consider all comments presented this evening before making a final decision regarding proposed Resolution 1-2023. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I now declare this hearing adjourned. We'll move into Resolution 2-2023. The subject of this hearing is Resolution 2-2023 for the purpose of amending the town charter to revise the references to the state office and regulations for the merit system. I will now ask Ms. Ebal to provide background on Resolution 2-2023.
Thank you, Council President. Yes, basically what you said, this resolution is to amend Section 702 Merit System Authorized, the wording of the state personnel office, so that the language is updated to the current name of that facility.
All right. I will now call upon Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk, to present evidence of the published notice of this hearing.
Certificate of Publication, State of Maryland, County of Queen Anne's. This is to certify that the annexed legal advertisement has been published in the 1/13/2023 Bay Times Record Observer.
Wonderful. We will first hear from all those in favor of proposed Resolution 2-2023, and then hear from all those opposed. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes. You are welcome to provide written testimony to the Town Council as well. The public comment guidelines will be dispensed with. We will now hear from all those in favor of proposed Resolution 2-2023. We will now hear from all those opposing proposed Resolution 2-2023. The Centreville Town Council will consider all comments presented this evening before making a final decision regarding proposed Resolution 2-2023. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I now declare this hearing adjourned. Another public hearing, 3-2023. The subject of this hearing is Resolution 3-2023 for the purpose of amending the town charter to revise the unclassified and classified service for the town. I will now ask Ms. Ebal to provide background on Resolution 3-2023.
So this resolution is created to amend the wording or the provisions regarding the unclassified and classified service definitions to update what is currently or what has always been as the process with our employees. So we're trying to make sure that the wording meets the action.
I will now call upon Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk, to present evidence of the published notice of this hearing.
Certificate of Publication, State of Maryland, County of Queen Anne's. This is to certify that the annex legal advertisement has been published in the 1/13/2023 Bay Times Record Observer.
We will first hear from all those in favor of proposed Resolution 3-2023, and then hear from those opposed. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes. You are welcome to provide written testimony to the Town Council as well. We will now hear from all those in favor of proposed Resolution 3-2023. We will now hear from all those opposing proposed Resolution 3-2023. The Centreville Town Council will consider all comments presented this evening before making a final decision regarding proposed Resolution 3-2023. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I now declare this hearing adjourned. Thank you, Crystal. Old business. Same as the public hearing. We can consider all three of the public resolutions, or the resolutions that were heard tonight. We'll start with Resolution 1-2023. Is there a motion to accept or adopt?
So moved.
Second?
So, yeah, aye. Second.
Any discussion about 1-2023? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 3-1. Resolution 2-2023 is the charter amendment, the merit system, Section 702. Is there a motion to accept? Adopt? A second?
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Resolution 3-2023, the charter amendment related to Section 703, unclassified and classified service. Any motion to adjourn? I'm sorry.
Wishful thinking.
Is there a motion to accept?
Resolution 03,
Thank you.
2023.
I appreciate
Second.
that. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, the motion carries. I'm going to let somebody else talk. The automatic license plate reader system, Council Vice President Kaiser.
Yeah, thank you. So we talked about this extensively at the last meeting. I did ask the chief of police to secure for me the last legislative audit of the system so I could see, sort of the use of it. Want to point out in the hearing, the gentleman from the state police had said we didn't have to worry about federal agencies accessing the information. That's not true. Federal agencies last year made 1,000 requests for information from MCAC and received 749 of them. So just, not that anyone cares, but just because that was misinformation that was shared in the meeting, yes, federal agencies can access it. Alarming data point to me in the audit was just the sheer volume of requests that come in that they don't find a legitimate law enforcement purpose for. So it's about a third or greater of all requests that MCAC gets that they don't provide the information because they don't see a legitimate law enforcement purpose. So I have come around to the car located, not the fixed, but the car located ALPRs. But the town is going to be required to report information up to MCAC for this legislative audit. And I would like on the police chief's monthly report for us to get that data that they're tracking. So how many times have they requested information and how many times was it declined? I just think
They're doing that on a monthly basis to the state?
No, they have to keep it year round. They have to keep it ongoing. Like
It's continuous.
the states, it's continuous. It's not like they just look it up at the end of the year and submit it. So they should know. It's like handwritten logs of these. But just, it'll probably be low numbers. But what I want us to track is if, like, let's say we make 10 requests and 8 of them are denied. I think it's important for us to understand if the state doesn't feel that our attempts to use it are illegitimate law enforcement purposes, for example. But I read the entire audit. It's a couple years worth of data. I have come around again to the in-car units in favor of the fixed units. And so, my mind has changed on this issue.
So you're in favor of the car?
I wouldn't say I'm in favor. I will not oppose.
Okay. The mobile units?
Yes,
Not the fixed units?
not the fixed units, because the fixed units don't provide the law enforcement safety piece that Lieutenant Larimore shared with us in terms of like when you're pulling a vehicle over, the immediate information before you approach the car. That is what made me think, okay, let me look at the data and see exactly how often this is being used. I do understand from a safety standpoint why our police department would want it. I see no value to the fixed units that outweighs the potential abuse.
Okay.
And the police chief shared he wasn't interested in the fixed units anymore anyway.
Correct. Yeah, that's what he said, yes.
Do we have consensus on the?
Good.
Got to talk into Mike.
Yeah, the police department is only interested in the mobile units. We're not interested in the fixed units. There's a long permitting process that we have to go through to the state of Maryland in order to obtain those fixed units. We're not interested in that, just strictly the mobile units. We're looking at it from a lot of different standpoints, but a big push for this is the officer safety reason.
Right on.
And I appreciate your testimony to that effect because truly that's what changed my mind. I thought about it long and hard, and so thank you for the time that you put into that hearing.
Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Do we have consensus on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, good. Wonderful. New business. Oh, hey. Resolution 4-2023, the classification plan and career ladder amendment, sponsored by the council president.
All right, trying to get to it. Yes, yes.
No, by all means, take your time.
Trying to get to the right page. Yes, so this is the resolution that we discussed at the previous town council meeting to dovetail the approval of the, I think I have the same issue, the comp study, the compression study that was completed with the officers. So this is just to properly present the resolution and the change in the classification plan, as well as the police department's career ladder with the lieutenant, to revise the lieutenant and the sergeant grades in the classification plan.
So just for the sake of clarity, I want to walk through this in layman's terms. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
So, which is the only terms I understand. Lieutenant and sergeant, essentially what's happened here over time is that the salaries of those two have compressed to become very close to one another, and in some cases, maybe there could be a sergeant making more than a lieutenant. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So what, basically, these movements, it's to alleviate compression that's actually occurring amongst like the corporals, sergeants, lieutenants. It is, in fact, yes, we want to not have a sergeant making more than a lieutenant, but because there is such a great distance in the grade between the lieutenant and the chief, and then corporal and sergeant were almost on top of each other as well with those grades.
Okay.
So moving the lieutenant, reclassifying it to, to the grade that we did, the 15, and then moving the sergeant position to the 13, that adds a grade between each to allow for some movement and some space between those positions.
Can you go through the ranks of the police department real fast?
Yes,
From
you
the
have,
top to the bottom, or the bottom to the top?
well, bottom to the top, so you have your officer first class, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, and then chief of police.
All right. Okay, thank you.
And it's actually non-competitive promotions from the officer to the sergeant. And,
Officer and then officer first class?
well,
or
officer to officer first class, then officer first class to corporal. That's all about time and grade and experience. Then you have your sergeant's positions, which is based on vacancy and selection. They go through a testing process, as well as with the lieutenant position.
And the, for lack of a better term, there's a single lieutenant in the department, or more than one?
There is one lieutenant in the department.
Okay, and he is sort of the second in command?
Correct.
Okay.
And then you have your sergeant, I'm sorry, I was going to say that the
Sergeants are kind of
sergeants,
shift leaders?
they are the shift leaders.
Okay.
And then your corporals are your senior patrolmen.
So this is sort of regulating the salary flow? Okay, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
We've done a lot of these, as was mentioned in the public hearing, so we'll make sure we're being clear about what they're doing up
Correct.
front. This needs a hearing, so we can't, no, it does not need a hearing. That's why it's
It's a policy.
highlighted on my page.
I know, it's this is a policy.
This is just a
We
policy,
can vote on this tonight.
yes.
So is there a motion to adopt, or any questions for Crystal?
There's no change in, you have a career ladder matrix
I do.
attached. There's no change in there.
Correct. Well, the only change that I am going to indicate is the
Grades.
police sergeant, grade 13, that was changed.
Yeah, the.
Yep, and the lieutenant, just
the
showing that
schedules,
the grade.
But the descriptions and the
Yeah,
qualifications.
nothing else had
nothing else
changed.
changed.
It was just the grades.
All right.
Sergeant is a 12 now.
Sergeant is a grade 13.
Now?
Oh, no, excuse me. A sergeant used to be a grade 11,
Okay,
and it is now a grade
I
13.
got you, okay.
Yes. I have them in red on the classification plan.
Excellent,
The corporal is a grade 11.
perfect. Any further discussion, or is there a motion? I will make the motion to approve Resolution 4-2023. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Last meeting, Vice President Kaiser and myself agreed to work on rules of council. We are still working through those. We will have an update, I suspect, by the next meeting. FY 2023 mid-year COLA, cost of living adjustment. I'm going to turn this over to Town Manager Kugel.
Okay, so I'm proposing this, as you remember last year, we brought forth data and did a mid-year instead of at July, at the change over the budget. This year, Queen Anne's County is doing 2%, Talbot 2%. Talbot Board of Ed is seeking 6%. I didn't get feedback from all the municipalities, although last year, I did talk to Easton. Last year, at this time, they were considering 3%, and what they actually did was the 4% with a $5,000 bonus to each employee. Due to that adjustment, they're not doing anything this year, providing an additional COLA mid-year this year, as far as that goes. So I'm requesting the council's approval for a mid-year 3% COLA for all employees. This increase will be effective the 31st of July, beginning of the pay period, and included in the 17 December checks. And this is to provide that mid-year COLA. It would cost the town a total of $34,720, and thank you for your consideration.
Effective January 31st.
I thought I said that.
You said July.
Did I? Freudian. February 17th, yeah. I thought I said that. I thought I read
The
it.
December, July and December. It was a confusing presentation.
Well, yeah. I'm off my game.
Is there any conversation about this, or any discussion folks would like to have?
I wasn't involved in the budget process for this year. That was prior to my election. How does this fit in with the approved budget?
Because of what we've had as far as staffing shortfalls, if you will, we can accommodate in this year's budget. We're going to be proposing a balanced budget for the next year that incorporates this.
So this would be covered by vacancies.
Yes.
The total that you're showing there, is that an annual number, or is that for the mid-year to the end of this year?
That is for, I believe that is mid-year to end of year.
Mid-year.
Yeah.
So for a full fiscal year, it would be,
70 grand.
what's that?
69,440.
I'm willing to go along with this. I think I would really prefer to get this off the mid-year. It just feels like something we should be doing as part of our budget. This is now at least the second year, or at least the second year around we've done this, right, Karen?
Consideration for it is built into the coming budget.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
At mid-year or for,
It will be incorporated in the budget with an effective date of mid-year if the council approves the budget. So in other words, there won't be another, there's a step increase built into the budget per the council's wishes, and then a mid-year 2% COLA built in that won't kick in until January.
I just don't know why we're doing a mid-year COLA increase. We should be doing, the COLA increase should come with the fiscal year, I feel like.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
For me, the genesis of it last year was when the inflation and everything kind of skyrocketed. And so we tried to do something to kind of mitigate. And
I
we
just don't want
also,
this to be something we're doing every year.
correct, well, and thank you for saying that, because we've talked about that as a staff. There is a point of, this is the skill level and expectation of the position. So there is a salary that goes with that. You just can't have an elevator that keeps escalating the salary schedule. It's unaffordable.
You just mentioned something about a 2% in January? Did I misunderstand you?
That built into the 24 budget,
That's what they're proposing in the next budget.
Any,
or we can shave it out. When we get to the budget discussions, that'll be at council's discretion when they look at the numbers, what they want to do.
Was there anything built into this year's budget?
Just the step increase.
No COLAs?
No.
Budget?
And how much did we do mid-year last year?
I think we did 3% last year as well.
is there a motion to do this? It does not sound like there is a motion to do this.
I'm not opposed to it, but I would appreciate a cycle to reflect on it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it either. I think, I appreciate the 3 examples that are here. I would appreciate more municipal examples, I think. And I don't consider a Board of Education comparable.
Gotcha.
I'm not opposed to it at all. I would prefer it be a COLA that we're considering as part of the budget when we consider the steps. So the 3% would take effect July 1 and be for that year. So then we're doing the COLAs with the budget.
We can revisit the budget if you'd like.
Yeah, I prefer it that way as well. I'd rather be aligned with the budget.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to take money out of people's pockets, but
I mean, I guess what we could do as an option also is approve this and then say, we want the budget proposal to include the full year. Let's get on track.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of getting on track by not doing anything, we get on track by doing it faster. You know what I mean? Instead of waiting until the budget, we do it now and we do it in the budget instead of waiting till next
an
January.
additional
You know what I
3%
mean?
in or whatever.
Or 2% or whatever it is, whatever we decide in budget time. But when we approve the budget, not have it be a COLA for effective January, we have it be a COLA effective July.
Well, then can I propose to this body then to do this now, and then we'll build in anything future for the budget for your considerations, with a range of options for you to look at.
People want to move this tonight, or we still want to wait till next meeting? So,
I'm fine to move it tonight. I can't get the attachment to open, so I can't read the proposed motion, and I just, held up by the technology. I make a motion to approve a mid-year 3% COLA increase for employees effective January 31st, 2023.
I'll second that. All those any discussion? Any further discussion?
You know, a benefit of this mid-year conversation is it comes after or concurrent with the federal government realignment of Social Security checks, those sort of things that they base. There's a lot of government that hinges off of a January cost of living a consumer price index. So there is some value to doing it mid-year to align ourselves with some of the other adjustments, but if you're not budgeting for it in October, it's kind of hard to do in February.
Yeah. I think it's a good discussion to have when we make the budget.
Yeah, we could put in the budget, but make it effective in January.
Subject to decisions.
Yeah, that's what,
Right, at least-
that's what staff was looking at. And then it becomes it's in the budget, and then based on economic indicators, the council then says, yeah, we're gonna do that, or no, we're not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a 2 or 3% increase is something we can't not do. I mean, it's just sort of basic, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there has been inflation this year. I mean, it really has, so it's not.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor of this right now, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you all. The future of the Centreville wastewater treatment plant.
Great. So as you all recall, I invited everybody in to kind of deep dive on this, and post-meeting, Dan put together some slides. We folded them into one of our other presentations to kind of give you guys a look at how things could evolve and some discussion points. So without further ado, I hate this damn
Without
thing.
further ado,
With a little bit of ado, there, whoops. So we talked about a phased approach in many of our discussions, and when WATEC briefed last week, they also talked about a phased approach, which is, you know, as you know, we're going for a lump sum of money to try to do this, but there are fiscal realities where we may get that in the budget, or they may look to phase it over a number of sessions before bringing that to the town and for final approving. We've also looked at the engineering enhancements that we move towards the treatment and filtering and the discharge technologies, that we have moved past the idea of sequential batch reactor that is larger, more filtering, and to another spray field, to look at options now that are a range of different filtering technologies and different possibilities as far as discharge. And then there's the legal policy and the legal and the policy parts coming out of MDE, or rather the legislature, to determine how municipalities handle this. Westminster is looking to discharge into their own reservoir and then refilter that into their drinking water. And that hit a roadblock, so there's legislation going in for a pilot program to allow them to do that. That could benefit us in the future as we move from a simple discharge into the stream or a water reuse discharge onto a field to indirect potable reuse, or even potentially in the future direct potable reuse. So when you get into the planning and design, you're looking at the shift to modern filtering. You saw the WATEC presentation on the different number of filtering options that we could go to, or we could maintain our current approach. We also start talking about size and capacity. If you look at where we are now, were we to rebuild that, you're not going to get the allocation fees for future improvement or expansion. If you go to 750,000 gallons per day, you're looking at something that's probably quickly gobbled up by just our infill. And then if you look at the million gallon per day, the benefit of that was both fiscally, it was a better deal, and the size of it would allow for the capture of allocations and fees so that we could build a war chest for future expansion. The spray field and access infrastructure are a challenge because, as you know, I've called a number of farmers in the area to try and acquire a farm. We had two that were going to allow us to test. 5:30 today, one of them backed off and said, There's one farm left that we can test on, and that's a significant investment in that property to add a second farm. You're also looking at the infrastructure, about $1 million per mile to pipe to those farms, should we get it. I've written to Mary Dua at MDE. She replaced Lee Curry, who had informed us last time we discussed that we had to, in fact, own the field that we spray on to count it towards our capacity. We don't have to own the field to spray on it, but the question is, does that field count towards our capacity for our permit? So we get up to splitting hairs there, but I think the conversations need to be had, and I'm trying to be very blunt with them, that for a small municipality, for any municipality, when you start talking about a multi-million-dollar piece of a wastewater treatment system, it becomes unaffordable if we've got to keep buying farms. So the other thing that goes back to what Jim and I have discussed is the idea of discharge into the stream in greater quantity. The TMDL maximum load is still there. However, if we go with the enhanced filtering, we're not worrying about that as much as we're filtering those parts out. So then it becomes a matter of how much we can discharge. So these conversations are ones we've taken up with the state to say, hey, we need to relook at this and say why exactly we can't do this, because these are the things we're proposing that we weren't proposing before.
If I could add to the comment you just made, discharge into the stream is also where in the stream we discharge.
Yes, yes. If you go down too far, we hit the TMDL area, we'd have to go to at least the bridge, just so that you've got sufficient water for mixing. Our current configuration, we're coming from the aquifer via our well to the treatment plant, to households and businesses, and to a basic nutrient removal wastewater plant with stream discharge from December to March, or to our pond and to our spray field. The initial upgrade that we were looking at is same path until we get to ENR, which is the enhanced nutrient removal, which sometimes we hit with our current plant, but we can't hit it on a recurring basis. So we're looking to increase the capacity and modernize that plant. The modernization is just as important as the increased capacity. We're looking at current stream discharge, but which requires TMDL adherence per MDE and EPA. So it's not just MDE that would have to approve this. And we want to move that to year-round. We still have our pond, which we would enlarge, and then we would add a second spray field with the additional infrastructure.
If we can consistently meet ENR standards, are you confident MDE will permit year-round stream discharge?
Kip, come on up.
Good afternoon.
Hello. No, I'm not confident they will permit year-round, and I just found this out this evening before the meeting when I was skimming through Comar, and by Comar, MDE must encourage wastewater treatment plants to find other discharge than stream discharge. So with that being said, I'm still very doubtful, regardless of how clean you make it, that they will allow 100% stream discharge year-round. So, and sorry,
That's fine.
I didn't find that, like I say, until maybe an hour before we came up here.
So you just said that no matter how clean it gets, you're not confident.
No, I'm not confident just because of what Comar says.
Okay.
That it says, in that subsection in Comar, it says absolutely nothing about how clean the effluent is or the qualities of it. It says that MDE must encourage wastewater treatment plants to find another means of discharge than stream discharge.
And the interesting part of that is when Kip and I went to the water reuse seminar and MDE briefed on that, their scientists are looking at climate change and saying, we're going to see more frequent and heavier rainfall, which negates a spray field. So it's sort of something we have experienced in a number of meetings, particularly when we started talking about surficial discharge. Not all departments in MDE are on the same page. So that's, we've had a few where we've been able to pull them all together. I've got a number of emails out this week to get to root truth on some of these answers. Now, if
That's
we,
irrespective, your point here is irrespective of how far that pipe goes out into the creek.
I know there was talk, when this plant, shortly after this plant that we're using now was built, there was some talk, or some historical documents and stuff, where MDE was looking at making the town extend the discharge point further. I can't,
That's getting to be a minute ago though, right? I mean, that's getting to be 2005, 6, 7,
3, I think it
Okay.
was, so,
pre-TMDL. For
it
sure.
was right on the cusp of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they were coming up with it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that since then, there's been discussion, both through EPA and MDE also, that they're starting to find that regardless of how clean the water is that's going into a particular stream discharge, now it's to the point it's diluting the nature, the natural stream.
Sure, it's changing
So-
the water chemistry.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
sure.
there's, it was probably about 15 or 18 years ago, there was a wastewater treatment plant in the state of Washington that was discharging to a river there, which was also a salmon spawning ground. So they're already very tight with their discharge limits. What happened there, they cleaned the water up so good, they took so much of the nutrients out of it and everything, that from that point downstream, the stream was no longer, the river was no longer growing the aquatic life that it needed to when the salmon hatched. There wasn't enough food for them. So what did they do? In this plant, when it was built, they took the biosolids, all the nutrients are in there, and they turned it into pelletized fertilizer. Now they take the pelletized fertilizer that they're taking out of the water upstream, and they're feeding it into the stream to fertilize the stream, for the health of the spawn.
they take it out and then they put it back in.
So, and I can't say that, 100% guaranteed they're not going to allow it, but I can tell you that they're going to look at it very hard.
Well, this certainly is not the direction MDE is moving.
No, it is not. That's
Hard to argue that.
right. Not just MDE, but the entire country. Like
Yeah,
the state of Florida, by 2035, all of their wastewater discharge has to be reused. They can no longer discharge, whether it's streams or oceans or anything. All of their discharge has to be for reuse. And, that's everything from irrigation to direct well injection to the potable reuse, which much of the West and the West Coast have already gone to. Other countries are much further ahead of us. India, for instance, is Egypt, or far surpassed our country with water reuse.
I didn't mean to bog you down.
No, it's okay. No, this is part of the conversation. It's, I know that our conversations with MDE, there are some inconsistencies on the directions they want to go, but they do seem to be moving towards water reuse. They encouraged us to talk to companies about water reuse because that is the direction they see the future in.
Yeah, and this is really just a step in that direction. It's really not, this isn't the final result.
Right. This was
Discharge year round, that's just,
the initial upgrade plan.
right, we got to start somewhere, right?
And then
So,
the proposed final configuration was to an ENR plant into reverse osmosis, where we would then treat the RO'd water with, and chlorinate it, and it would go back into, filtered again into our drinking system. But prior to that, we've looked at year-round, and it may not be that we can get to year-round. That said, even if we're still using our spray field and our stream discharge, the plant's capacity can be increased, but we still have to stay within the confines of our permit until such time as we would move on to the next phase of configuration, which we add that quaternary treatment to reverse osmosis, and at that point we could start looking at either if they do approve the year-rounds or still with the spray field. But then we get to phase 3 where we start talking about an injection well and reclaiming water. And then having our stream discharge and spray field as a backup. This is your indirect potable reuse. And it goes back into the Aquia aquifer. Clarification on one of the things from YTech, the Aquia aquifer where we use it is fine. If you go past the Kent Narrows onto Kent Island, you cannot drill into the Aquia, and that's been since 1986. There's been a moratorium there, it's brackish. And then the final configuration where we go with reverse osmosis and remove the injection well, if that is the long-term plan. Now that would be phased, and what I mean by that is when you got to a point where you either had to increase your capacity or you had to replace the wellhead or something that would be a fiscal shift, if you will, a reinvestment, that you move on to that next phase, which would be direct potable reuse.
Why would you do that?
Why direct potable reuse?
Yeah, well, if the injection well's working okay, why would you do that?
Well, I said that if you decided to go to that, because that's your maximum reuse of water right there.
The other thing is that once you go through the treatment process with the RO, that water is actually cleaner and better than the water we're getting out of the well.
Oh, no, I get that. I'm just saying, if you've made the investment in the injection well infrastructure, and it's working okay for you, you know, why?
Because you're basically pumping the same water twice when you pump it back out of the well again, so why not
But
just...
do you think you can, I mean, is the cost savings enough? Are you gonna be able to get enough drinking water just from, and not pull from? Right.
You're
You're
not
still gonna have to run a pump from the well, right?
We're still gonna have to have an additional source.
Okay.
But that will cut at least half of what we're withdrawing out of the aquifer, because it will be blended.
Do you know if any other community in the United States that's running water out of the back end of a wastewater treatment plant through RO into their drinking water system?
Yes.
There are.
Yep, Wichita Falls, Texas. They had a problem, of course, as bad as the drought has been and everything, severely out in the west like it's been. They withdrew their drinking water from reservoir and river out there. Because of the drought, they couldn't keep the reservoir full enough to use, and they were up against their withdrawal permit from the river. They went in and looked at this type of treatment process, and after years worth of study on it, and they were discharging back into the reservoir, they said, why are we putting it in the reservoir just to take it out and refilter it? So they did a direct potable reuse where it went in at the head of the water treatment plant. The people, once they got through all the education process and understood and got using the water, now they don't want them going back to withdrawing from the river and from the reservoir, because the quality of water and the taste was so much better. There's studies on that. Actually, MDE even lists that particular city on MDE's website as far as water reuse.
There, looks like they're mixing 50% wastewater with 50% lake water.
That's about what it amounts to. The ratios.
And in our
may be-
system here, that would be 50% coming out of the wastewater plant, 50% coming out of the well.
At least,
Roughly.
yes, roughly.
If we didn't do reuse, wouldn't we have to increase our water capacity in the first place? We'd have to drill new wells, or we'd have to add more treatment if we did not,
if we didn't do
if we didn't
reuse,
reuse
yes,
water.
we would
We'd still have to
definitely-
increase capacity.
We would have to put another well in to increase capacity.
Right.
Anything that happens regardless, as the usage on both the wastewater and the water side increase, you have to pretty much follow them simultaneously.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to run out one side or the other.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing that in long-range planning, we've already discussed, what do we do if we have to put a third well in, and we kind of spitballed the idea of where we could put a third well in if we needed it, and, what we had to do to the water plants to make that work. It just happens the water plant on Comet Drive was built with the capability to expand it and add another filter so that you could hook another well to it and increase the pumping capacity.
So then the idea here is that in this phase configuration, that we build phase one, and then it can be built out to phase two sort of naturally, right?
Yes, in other words, there would be T's and valves built in.
Right, and the reason why we're phasing is because of cost, generally, strictly
But
because?
it's a combination of smart engineering, what our fiscal reality ends up being, and then what the legislature and the rules and policies that for the state allow.
There's no denying that there's going to have to be legislation and policy changes with MDE to get to a full direct potable reuse.
So there's,
in
this
the
regulatorily, this can't happen now.
Like Chip just said, no, it can't happen right now because of what's going on in Westminster. At this point, there's no permit from MDE to do a direct
I got you,
potable
okay. All
reuse.
right.
So that's where the policy has to change, the legislation has to change in this state to allow it. But however, when you look at not just Westminster, but what Anne Arundel County is working on, the pressure from EPA to go that direction, you have the neighboring state of Virginia that's doing the well injection, so the aquifer injection. So it's coming.
It would be helpful to have costs associated, I mean, maybe we do, but of these phases, because if this is, $30 million and phase three is $25 million, I'm just making those numbers up. Like, it feels like we ought to go, with this option. It's only gonna get more expensive.
No matter what we do, it's going to get more
Right,
expensive. If you choose to do absolutely nothing but upgrade the plant at the current discharge limits, it's going to get more expensive every year, every 5 years, because they're going to keep tacking on more regulations with a tighter discharge limit. But until you folks as council make a firm decision that what we're going to do with this wastewater plant, once we get to that point, that's where we can start working on the design of it, and that's where the numbers come back, to be able to choose how it's phased in.
For a reality check, I did reach out to WATEC this week and say, kind of, where does $30 million get me in this? Does this get us all the way to phase three, or how do we build this out? Because if the money comes in this year, that's different, then you could run into an issue. If the money is phased or our development is phased, then we work not just with our lobbyist, but with our designer and with the money piece to get to that end point, which was, I think, slide 3.
It's difficult to, this process has been complex. We have some money that's come in through a variety of different channels, and I'm gonna let you.
Here they are.
Go ahead.
So right now, we are in the current budget from the Bay Restoration Fund at roughly 14.9 million. From congressionally directed spending, we got 2.15 million. We have between 2.5 and 3.3 in ARPA. We have 3.3. We had dedicated 2.5 in the budget to purchase a spray field. And then we had the remaining 800,000 to use as a bridging component to start planning and design and things like that until the money started flowing from the state. And then the rural development grant from Commerce, we have 500,000. We are also in the budget with a loan part. Our full freight in the budget is like 29.8 million for another 14.9 million, which is marked as a loan, but those negotiations are ongoing. We're still having meetings with secretaries and committee chairs and things of that nature. Our total application to MDE was 32 million. The PER this was based on was dated back in 2017 at 25 million with a 30% contingency. We could probably safely assume that some of those costs would have gone up, particularly over the past 2 years. So
Redone that PER since I've been here, right?
We started it in 17, it got tabled because there was, previous council felt that they were not gonna purchase a farm, and at that point, without purchasing a farm, there's no sense going any further.
What did we pay for then? What didn't we?
It keeps going up because we keep pushing the date off and can't get a firm commitment on what the council wants to do.
I just thought we had a PER that was more recent than 2017.
That was when it was started. It's been amended so many times since then.
I see, okay.
For a whole plethora of reasons that it was amended, but,
I have a question about our ARPA funds, and so maybe it's a Karen question, but the National Mayors Association is concerned about a potential congressional clawback. I mean, I think the mechanics of it are somewhat unlikely, but one of the ways that they're advocating that cities and towns can avoid a clawback is by making sure that every penny of their ARPA is allocated, not spent, but allocated. How much of ours is considered allocated? Is it just the 2.5 or is it the whole 3.3 or?
All but 820,000.
Okay. So we might want to consider formally allocating that just in case. I mean, I think the mechanics of the federal government's ability to draw money back from municipalities is a behemoth that they cannot overcome. But just wanted to put that out there too, because there is national concern about that happening.
Just a question about this chart. So all of that totals 32 million, or no, that can't be that.
no.
No, total application, and so how much money do we have?
If we use all of it, we're right around 37 million.
37.
Yes.
If you count the loans and everything.
Yes.
And if we manage to keep our 14.9 too.
Yes.
That's in the budget. But money we're sure of, we're at like 6 million. Right?
Yes.
So how much of this can we do for $37 million?
I think we can get phase 1 at that. With the approach that you're gonna build in to be able to go to phase 2.
What is the financial situation of the town when we build this thing? Let's say we're able to convert $14.9 million currently allocated in loans to pure grant. So 37 million bucks comes to us, no strings attached. We don't have to pay it back. what does that then do to force us to grow? To put, I mean, does it change the position where we are so, is the plant's operating costs so voracious that we have to grow just to get the ratepayers?
You're kind of at that point now, just with, you have to upgrade the plant. You have no money to upgrade the plant, except for what Chip and everybody has worked so hard to get this tranche of money. The reason you don't have it is because there has been no growth, and when...
No, the reason why we don't have it, I don't...
Wait a minute, let me finish, please. Because there hasn't been any growth recently. The growth that occurred early on, the money got spent
Right.
for the capital budget.
Sorry for interrupting.
Instead of, it was supposed to be put in a can over here for today, because you've got a plant that is just about obsolete and it's on its last leg.
But you're
I-
talking about like the monthly running of the plant.
Yeah, right. What I don't want to do, right, is for this plant, we get this all done and we got a spanking new plant and look at what we got now. And then it costs, X plus Y to operate, and we need to go out and every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to build a big development comes in, and we can't say no because we need the revenue so bad. Not necessarily the allocation fee, but the monthly, the quarterly rate.
Like I said, I feel you're at that point now. Part of that being that the town is so debt heavy right now, so much of the money that's coming in from water and wastewater bills is paying a heavy load of debt. If we can get out from underneath of that debt, which Chip has a very good plan moving forward, that's going to help a whole lot, and that will ease things for you. But in my 35 plus years and all the other systems that I've worked with, either as a contractor or worked for, struggle with the same thoughts,
Well, in a state,
without growth to pay for it.
in a state where we prioritize water quality the way that we do, right, and it's on my license plate.
Yep.
The notion that municipalities have to be like a hamster, and this is not directed at you,
No, I understand.
has to be like a hamster on a wheel that can never stop running, right? And it's like, it's like we had to destroy the town to save it mentality. And I find this to be anathema.
And
I mean, completely threatens, in my view, the future of municipal government.
the other way to look at it is you have to also realize that Maryland Department of the Planning pushes growth to municipalities, to small towns, local towns that have the water and wastewater treatment. So, they're going to come to the small towns. If you want something that's not going to be affected like that, you have to go to a development that's out in the middle of nowheres. And I can guarantee you at some point, there will be a time when all those septic systems fail, or there's problems with their wells, or they start getting PFAS out of their drinking water, that they're going to wind up making those developments tie in, whether it's Centreville, whether it's Ken Island's wastewater plant, what have you. So you're absolutely right. It's like a hamster in a wheel. It never stops.
So, I think the way I was envisioning was that if we expanded the plant, then this council or councils in future would have options where it comes to growth. But it sounds like you're saying no matter what we do to afford to run water, wastewater in this town, we have to grow?
And you have to allow some growth to be able to get caught up. There's got to be a scale of economics there that once you get to a point, yes, you may be able to do something. But when you have regulations coming down from EPA and MDE saying, for discharge purposes, you have to look at water reuse. And then you look at water reuse and you see how expensive it is. So, you know.
I mean, I'm in favor of some thoughtful and intentional growth, so I don't want my comments to be misconstrued as saying I'm anti-growth, but I don't like a feeling of, you know, our hands are tied either way either.
I think if you get into expanding, so as we've talked about, for 1 million gallons per day, there is room for growth. Now, this phased approach, like I said, if we don't have the discharge capacity, the council can say, well, we're not going to approve anything at this time. When we
But
get-
will we be able to afford to run the plant?
So there are grants out for power and solar, and a lot of the newer plants like this, they're heavy with solar. If you look at that picture in that one, you could cover that roof with solar. We could add to the farm. If we're not using the farm as we are now, you could put more solar arrays out there. There are renewable energy options and other options for grants to help with that. That's something I've talked with some engineers about. But I think more to the point on growth, the idea is that if you do some growth, for the sake of discussion, Turpin Farm or Carter Farm, and those allocation fees go into the lockbox that this council has said that they would like to, that develops a war chest for either future expansion or future upgrade to a new plant. You could, as this council, you know, put in place that action, and in future councils might say, you know what, we still have a lot of allocations. We're not interested in growing right now. We're going to take those monies. We're going to upgrade our electronics. We're going to buy new membranes. Or in 20 years, an entirely new array of technological options have come out that kind of set this on its ear. I mean, this wasn't around, well, it was around, but it was fledgling 20, 30 years ago. So I think it still keeps the council's voice strongly in play as to how far we grow.
What are we sharing when we're meeting with department heads and legislators about our grant? Like, what are we saying we're going to do with the money?
That we are looking to build, that we have to modernize and upgrade our plant. We talk about the modernization as because of the fragility of the plant and because it is so old, and that the upgrade is a product of just being fiscally responsible. If we were to upgrade to 750,000 gallons per day, it cost us 18 million. And if in 10 years we need more, it's going to cost us another 18.
But we're not like committing ourselves to
No,
this.
we haven't committed
No,
to any course of
absolutely
action.
not.
So how much capacity does 37 million get us?
The million.
This is the million gallons.
1 million gallons.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right,
But-
so which pretty much takes care of infill lots and the two farms.
A million, excuse me,
A million allows you to double the town's population, more or less.
or a million gives you 2,250 more EDUs, which would be, you know, 2,000, well, not necessarily 2,000 homes. You guys would probably save some of it for commercial or something along that line. 750,000 will give you just over 1,000 EDUs.
I think it, and not saying that it will ever happen, but if every one of your vacant lots were built, if the business park built out, if the Turpin Farm, the Carter Farm, if they were built to what they're zoned for, then you're gonna be up to your million. I mean, that alone can double the population of your town, just infill within the town. If it's built to capacity, in other words. But,
And didn't we have consensus, previous council, like a year ago, that we were marching towards getting funding for the 1 million gallons?
Yes.
that was how we were directed.
I'm still in favor of that.
Not this council.
Previous council.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know where this council would be, but I think, you know, I said this to the planning commission, you know, the fact that we don't have the capacity now has served as a convenient break to keep us from having to make decisions about growth. And, you know, this room, when we talk about Carter Farm, this room fills up. And I think you start to talk about Turpin Farm, you know, I think Carter Farm is going to be child's play compared to potentially hundreds of units at Turpin Farm in terms of public outcry. And so I don't say any of that with bias or judgment. I just say this council and future councils, such as they have no agency, has to be eyes wide open to the fact that when we have this new plant, those battles are going to get a little more keen. They're going to be a little more real. And some of that's going to come online by right. And I think it's just something to really consider before we commit to anything here, is that I think what we're describing is you have to grow to pay the freight on the plant, and a little bit of growth here is okay to pay. You know, that's yesterday's money, right? And even at 4% interest rates, which we're not going to keep that there forever, yesterday's money is not worth what today's money, or the other way around. And that money is not even keeping up with inflation. And it's all the other things, the roads and the underground infrastructure, and all the other services we provide on residential, it just doesn't pan out. You can't charge enough to have a kitty big enough to always pay for all the services that these places demand. And to me, it just feels like a Faustian bargain.
And the other thing is, which is unfair to you folks sitting on the council, so many things got kicked down the road so far as having to replace the infrastructure. It's an old town, nothing's gonna last forever. Do you remember the year we did the first rate study? It was 2014, wasn't it?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Okay. We were carrying nowhere near the debt that we currently are. And even then, with the rate study, what was suggested in the study to raise the water and sewer bill to be able to catch up was not adopted. So that can got kicked down the road, thinking that eventually it would catch up by raising it, a few years at a time or 6 years at a time to get there. But the thing is, you've lost all that time. So now you've incurred more debt. I don't know that we're probably close to the point of where that 2014 rate study said we should have been charging. And yes, I understand it's a burden on the residents and everything, but that's for you folks to decide how you want to deal with it. All I can do is tell you what I know from experience. So,
Well, this growing to pay for it's like a dog trying to catch his tail, in my opinion. Never going to do it. I just don't see it. I don't, it's not.
Well, we're not in a unique position. It seems to happen everywhere.
No,
Right.
exactly.
So, I mean, if you can think of a better solution, then, I guess that's the problem. Nobody's really thought of a solution for this, so.
Well, perhaps not to go blindly down the same path as.
Well, I plan on not going into a lot of debt to do it. That's really,
That's true.
yeah.
but that's the other thing is, with the plan to clear this debt happening, and the money that you have coming, that's a big gift right there. And by the time you clear that debt and do what you have to do to fix your plant and everything, that's going to put your town in a whole lot better shape. I can tell you that I don't know of any other wastewater plants that received that much money that were not all tied to loans to have to pay back.
Can we go back to phase one here?
Yep.
Okay, so it's really just the ENR wastewater plant, right?
That's basically all, you have to do something with that, and we have to do something with the discharge.
So if we don't get year-round discharge in this model, we need a farm and a spray field, an additional.
By the time you get to before you get to 1 million gallons, yes, you will need another.
How soon before?
How soon before?
Yeah.
Well, another thing I have to bring for you tonight, which is budgeted, just to inform you, we have to expand the size of the pond there because we're at the point that with the rains coming like they do and everything, we can't get the pond level down by irrigation following MDE's guidelines permit as to when we can spray and can't spray. So we're kind of borrowing time, but it'll be part of the upgrade. It's a part that has to be done for the upgrade anyway. But the other thing is, by going through these other avenues of water reuse, we're hoping that eventually we'll only have the one farm, which may be able to even sell that off at some point.
But in terms of this configuration, is it 5 years before you need a farm? Is it, I mean, what is your ballpark?
You have to tell me, the first thing I need to know is how much development you're gonna allow in 5 years. So it goes back to that.
How many EDUs then? If you're saying we're gonna have 2,000 more, how many can we use before we need a farm? Is it none? Is it half?
If we don't do anything as far as like enlarging the pond or anything, we're pretty close to done right now, unless you can get the stream discharge,
Okay.
you know.
And this without the farm, without buying a farm, and without getting the infrastructure to that farm, this is $37 million.
That's
included in that phase one.
In the phase one, it's just taking us to ENR. That basically there is the PER at 25 million.
Okay.
So you can get a farm too.
Yeah, so the farm is included in phase one.
Yeah.
At 25 million or 37 million?
It was at 25 million when the PER was
written.
Okay. So this with a farm, what's on the screen now with a new farm gonna cost, you think?
That's what I'm saying. I think the 37 will get us phase one.
Okay. Well, I feel like that's just way more money than we talked about a year ago.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
significantly higher.
Everything's way more money than it was a year ago.
It's 15 million more dollars than we talked about a year ago.
Yeah, and part of that, correct me if I'm wrong, Chip, when you worked on the application or whatever to MDE, they said to factor in additional costs that are budgeted elsewhere, like staff and
Like
other
staff
things.
and things like that. So,
There's,
This math is not,
yeah, I think that configuration right there, the initial upgrade plan, is, per the application, it's 25 million. Now, the unknowns are the cost of the field, because they put in a rough order of magnitude of cost of 2,500, 2.5 million, sorry. And then the infrastructure to get to the field can be a challenge. And so.
but a $12 million one, I mean,
Well, I think that would be the way high end. I think more like 6 at most. What we're looking at, folks, when this was, the concept was, we're gonna buy a field and we're gonna upgrade our plant. And then as we started having meetings and asking questions and doing digging, it wasn't nearly that cut and dry.
can you go back to the funding slide?
But before we do, I just want to be clear. What's on the screen right now, this staff estimates is $37 million US.
I don't believe that's 37 million. No.
Okay.
All right, if we go to the funding slide. Because I just refuse to accept that it's $37 million for that. We need to be thoughtful about, let's say we are able to turn that 14.9 in loans into grant. We're gonna then have $37 million that we've told every level of government we're gonna spend on this plan. I mean, we don't have the option to just save 7 million of it forever, right? So like,
Right.
you're gonna be required to spend that CDS money within whatever time frame the agency gives you. I mean, we have next to no control over that. You're gonna be required to spend that Bay Restoration Fund money however the Board of Public Works gives it to you. I mean, we might not have to pay it back, but there's gonna be plenty of strings. And so we need some real estimates of cost, I think.
Yeah.
Because the exposure, while it's not an exposure to the ratepayer on their water bill, it's an exposure to the taxpayer in every imaginable way, that the town of Centreville's asking to spend $37 million of the taxpayers' money. And so while I think we're a good buy, why I think this is an excellent investment, where I could lobby for this all day, we have to arm our professional lobbyists and arm you and with the information that we need. I wouldn't feel comfortable, sitting down with a legislator and saying like, yeah, I mean, 37 million is going to be somewhere around there. I mean, we need
So
some
I-
sort of reasonable estimate.
Well, it seems like the sticking point is, well, how much does a farm cost, and where is the farm going to be located? Without
How
that,
much is a farm going to
you know.
be versus injection wells?
Right.
Why buy a farm that might be, not necessary and not that long, or you might not even need it all,
But
when you can just,
Oh, that has been my conversation, and I include Tommy on my correspondence with MDE, is you are,
For the public's benefit, Tommy is our lobbyist.
yeah, you are asking us, your science department is saying that injection wells aren't sustainable. You're telling us we can't discharge year-round to a stream. You're telling us you can't do this, but your different departments are all arguing with each other that, as I put it to them, you have to understand that when Department of Planning is telling people to move towards the infrastructure, and you're telling towns to grow, you've got to do these things. $3 million for a farm and $6 million high-end infrastructure to get there isn't something you can just hurl into the back of a small municipality and say, go forth and do this. That we know Westminster is looking at a pilot study, and they've already built much of what they need. We know Anne Arundel has been studying this for a couple of years now. There needs to be a forcing function for MDE to kind of make a decision, and that may become a legislative activity that says, hey, look, here's what we're telling our municipalities to do. We've got to come up with different technologies that will allow them to actually do this. It's not affordable otherwise. So I've asked, like I said, I've asked WATEC to say, hey, what does this look like as far as what $30 million gets us? I guess the second part of that question is not just if it's 1 million gallons, but what is the price for 750,000 gallons a day?
Yeah, because it seems like the approach without purchasing another farm, the costs could be better defined. With the farm in
Right.
in the equation, it's
Well,
they'll define how much it's going to be, because we don't know how much the farm's going to cost.
Right.
And we don't know how far it's going to be. The farther away it is, the more it costs to run pipes to it. That, ultimately, we'd probably abandon anyway.
Yeah. The hardest part of this is that we're not 5 years ago, we're now up against it with where our plant is. And the latitude we had with capacity is gone. The latitude we had with some aging is gone. That we're stuck trying to make very complicated decisions while we're pulling data on a daily basis.
what are the next steps in the decision-making process for this council?
As far as I see it, you have to make a decision as to, are we just upgrading what we have? Are we upgrading to the 750, or are we upgrading to the million? And that's the first thing I need to know, because we can't bring you prices back.
But I'm confused because we did that a year ago. We
And
made
you
that
said to go
decision
to
a year-
$1
We
million.
said go to 1 million a year ago.
We said go to 1 million, so now it is, I think, what technology do we use?
I mean, I'm not saying that can't be changed. I'm just saying if that's, how can it be the same next step a year later?
I think we need, I understand what you're saying, Kib. I think in terms of the decision-making process, I was asking about coming back to us with these, the cost estimates, and then letting us make a decision based on those cost estimates
Yeah,
feels like the next step.
next step. I'll see what I can pull in the next 2 weeks. It may take longer, I'll let you know.
We have been
Can the engineering
circling,
be done where we can go in modules, where we go from our, 530 that we have now to 750, and then you go to 1 million later without having to redo what you've already done? Is there a way to put this in modular units?
We already looked at that, and that was when we brought it to the council before. It was, how much was it to go to the 750? Do you remember?
18 million.
18 million. At the time, it was
18.9, I'm sorry.
18.9 to go to the 750. It was 25 million to go to the million and get twice the capacity.
I think
out of
what
it.
you're asking, Jim, is kind of this where you're funding and your engineering and design and your different technologies for both filtering and discharge are kind of, okay, our first step is we're gonna be able to do this much filtering, which will allow maybe greater stream discharge. And then at the next phase, we're gonna incorporate an injection well and increase to 1 million gallons. So it may be that we don't get there all in one go. That, like you're saying, there's a phased engineering that not just the phasing of the technology, but the phasing of the discharge as well, and our capacity is phased over time. I'm not an engineer, so it's a little bit out of my comfort zone to try and.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
Yeah, but I think that is the model we need to go to.
And as Kip has pointed out, if you take your wastewater from 530 to 1 million, you've got to take the water system up as well. With or without the reinjection, you still have to increase that infrastructure.
The PER for the water was budgeted for this year, and we're getting ready for those bids to go out.
On your water side, you're a little bit better than you are on your wastewater. And the thing is that it's, it's not like we build a 1 million gallon plant and 5 years later, you're up to capacity of 1 million gallons. You control the growth regardless of what happens. So,
And even if the plant's not going to be done for a few years anyway. So anybody that's coming to us with a plan, that's even further out than we start building. So we're at this capacity for the next several years.
So, and none of these phases are paid for from allocation fees, they're all from grants or some other
Yeah,
methods.
we don't have any money from
we
allocation.
don't have any
grants.
allocation.
I mean, ultimately, if you have more capacity, then you can
Future.
sell it in the future. Like we finished phase 1, phase 2's not paid for from allocation fees that we generated from additional capacity, right? Or-
I don't think you
We
could
don't-
pull in enough in allocation fees.
That's right, that's what.
Yeah,
I'm
the
trying to
idea
say.
behind
Right.
them that you could generate with 300 homes, 400 million in allocation fees, but you would need that time for it to mature and earn interest over the decade or so to get to that next plant.
Right,
where
so
that-
it's a major
Yeah, it's yeah.
modernization or something, or technology change, but, yeah. Well, we're also concerned about the maintenance of these, so the additional.
There's going to be upgrades, there's going to be periodic upgrades, or, a benefit, as Jim pointed out, modular development is also modular repair.
Right.
That as you modularize your build-out, your phased build-out, you phase your modernization over time, too.
So I'm not at all in favor of just fixing what we currently have, but for purposes of the question, if we were successful in maintaining what we're currently budgeted for in the state budget for grant, our congressionally directed spending, our ARPA, we might have that. Like, we
Yes.
might know come April that we have that,
Yes.
How much?
that enough to just fix what we have.
I am comfortable
If we
saying.
get that 14.9, that puts us at,
You mean they
Like
don't
a
make
little-
it, they keep it alone, we don't get it all as a,
and we decline the loan, we take only the grant, then we maybe have enough money just to fix what we have. And again, I'm not in favor of that, let's.
I am
start,
increasingly
yeah.
in favor of that.
Sorry?
I am increasingly in favor of that. I mean,
Fixing what we have.
I started this ready to go to 1 million gallons, and now I see, the thinking that a phased approach that counts on allocation fees to pay for itself defeats the point of the allocation fees. The allocation fees are supposed to be there for the future, not for themselves.
Right.
No, the allocation fees are paying for the capacity that you just installed.
Right, but
They're not paying for next generation's capacity.
That's what they're
buying
supposed to
this
do.
capacity.
No, they're supposed to pay for the future.
Which defeats
Well,
the
Capital
purpose of the
improvements might
application.
not increase the
You
capacity.
can't build this plant with allocation fees unless you pre-sell.
But I mean, when you're using them, the ones you don't even have yet, when you're budgeting them to build this plant,
No, we're not budgeting them to build this plant.
but you just talked about a phased approach where you were. You
No,
just-
he had asked that question, and my answer was,
Or was not the case, right.
if you phased it, you can't generate enough in allocation fees to do a phase.
Right. It will always require more grants.
The point of allocation fees is, just to say, the point of allocation fees is so you can build a plant 20 years from now.
Exactly.
This is also hypothetical until we have some sort
I
of cost
differ on that
estimate.
greatly, but go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's fine. I mean, we need some cost estimates, right? I mean, we can sit up here and talk about what we would do with 20 million, 37 million, whatever million. It's meaningless to me. I don't know enough to even make an educated guess. And so we need some cost estimates. I think I am still in favor of expanding the capacity to the full 1 million gallons. I would like to see us continue to power toward trying to convert these loans into grants. I think that's a heavy lift, but not a totally unattainable one. I share the sort of puzzlement that we were talking about like 24 million last year to 37 million. And I like the idea of the new technology. I frankly like the idea of the direct injection, which sounded not great to me until the council president used like the only analogy that would work. Nothing repulses me more than a cat in a kitchen. And so that analogy sold me on the direct injection. But I just, if the cost of all of it is 80 million, well, then what are we talking about? Because we can't go back to the state, go back to the feds every year and say, another 10 million would be great, another 5 million would be great. I mean, we need to know what we can do with what we're trying to get now.
We'll get you
some
real
numbers.
figures.
Yeah.
So,
You want to say anything? All right. Are we good? Have we beat
so.
this horse?
Yeah. It's,
All right.
as you see, it's, yeah,
All right.
mind melter.
Evolving story.
Well, we'll stick with, Kip, you might want to hang up here. Internet access, broadband, fiber optic.
Okay. Sorry, I just pulled this together for everybody.
I assume you have them?
If not, he can remind.
There should be enough.
I'm sure you had one, so.
Let me understand what you want to talk about as far as broadband.
I think there's a perception on the street that the town council, I'm going to be as frank as I possibly can be, there's this belief on the street that the town council is blocking fiber optic coming through town.
Okay. What I gave you was a timeline that explains how we got to the point we're at now and where it started from. Just for the purposes of this discussion, none of this has to do with anything with Northbrook install out there, with the exception that we're talking about, Talkie Communication. They were the ones that did the work and installed out to Northbrook. They balked quite a bit about us making them get a permit to do the install out there. But once we got through that permit and everything, the installation went very smooth and everything. The reason the town did that was because of all the problems and horror stories that everybody heard that other towns experienced with Talkie coming in, installing their fiber. When we're talking about this particular incident, we're blocking it. Back in May of 2022, this is when I officially learned that Talkie was running the trunk line through. In other words, had discussion with them or from them about this. We knew that they were running the line, kind of heard rumors that they were running, needing to run from Hope Road down to Route 50 at least. They were doing this work for Maryland Broadband, from what I understand. They were going to pull their own trunk line as well. In May of 2022, we received missed utility tickets for marking the route from Hope Road as far down as the bridge, and then wanting to come up Liberty Street. It was at that point the town staff put a hold on those missed utility tickets because there was no permit applied for. Emails were sent that same day, which Talkie got back to us and stated this is a state road, and didn't know that he needed a permit from the town to go under the state road. The next day, I spoke with his construction superintendent, discussed what was going on and everything. He explained everything, said they had their state highway permit to go into state highways right away and everything, had it all laid out. I explained, you're still going through within the town limits to protect our infrastructure. We're asking for this permit. There was still some angst with them and everything. For a long conversation for that day, we did wind up getting the documents sent to us showing the state road permit and everything that was requested. However, right after I got that email, I got another email late that night that said, we can't go by it because we're going to change what side of the road we're going on, so that's going to make a difference, but the state highway permit doesn't matter or anything. So, make a long story short, that was the first part of May. At the end of June is when I officially received the formal request from them wanting the town permit. We started working on the permit by the state. We hadn't finished it. We were working on the draft of it. They decided to come in because they were working in state road. State highway requires a pre-construction meeting. I wasn't in town when that happened, but Mike Whitehall and Jim Kelwall, one of our staff, attended it. It had the construction superintendent, also the state representative was there. It was at this meeting that Talkie realized that the state highway right-of-way is only from the back curb on one side of the street to the back of curb on the other side of the street. Hence the need for a permit to go through town where we have right-of-ways. It just happens on Lawyers Row and on Commerce Street. We have no right-of-way behind the curb. It's a state highway. State highways right-of-way comes to the property owner's line, and we don't have a utility easement like we have in developments like Northbrook, Providence Farm, and all that. So we can't even grant them a right-of-way. This was kind of explained to them, and they were asking for how can we move forward with this. There's some discussion that a franchise agreement may be able to grant them the right-of-way from the property owners. We found out this wasn't true. If there's no right-of-way there, that franchise agreement doesn't have anything to do with it. With that being said, Talkie went ahead, put in missed utility tickets again, started boring down from Hope Road to where the subway is. Had some questions about line locates and missed utility tickets. So the staff went out, and we talked with them and everything, and they brought their plans out while the state highway inspector's there and says, we're not going behind the curb and sidewalk, we're going to stay in the state road, we're going to put our handholds right next to the point of access, right next to the curb in the roadway. Well, right then and there, the state inspector shut them down and said, no, you will not, you can't put them there. So which turned everything back around again. Now all of a sudden they're coming to the town wanting right-of-way to be able to install on the sides of the road. It was explained to them that you're gonna have to go to each property owner and get them to grant you the right-of-way. The town can't, so.
Just to be clear, where exactly are we talking about here? I mean,
They're running a trunk line from Hope Road through town.
the Hope Road, the town boundary on Hope Road?
No, they have, yes,
Okay,
from the town boundary on Hope Road.
Down to like Centreville Police Department.
down,
Right.
okay,
Okay.
so they want to be on the south side of Hope Road? I guess it doesn't matter. What you're suggesting is the right-of-way for the utilities is curb to curb, right?
For state highway, yes.
But where's our utility?
We have an agreement with state highway because we have the utilities under the state road.
Okay, they can't be in those same right-of-ways?
They can, but they can't put their point of access in the roadway. That has to go behind a curb,
Okay.
which
So where do we have point of access then?
we stop at the curb. All the water and sewer lines on Commerce and Liberty, we stop at the curb. We do have a water meter, which by
Yeah. Right.
we're allowed to put the water meter there, but that's where our responsibility stops on all those lines.
And
from
this is
there
not
to
a
the
problem
house.
they've run into anywhere
In
else?
Chestertown or?
I can guarantee you they probably did.
They've had problems in downtown Chestertown getting through there, so.
What's the alternative? Going on the line? They don't want to do that?
The alternative is for them to go to each property owner that they're crossing and get their own right-of-way to enter the property and install it.
Which
The
is what I
town-
believe Think Big did in Chestertown. They
Yes.
went and obtained individual right-of-way from the property owners.
Yeah.
Easement ability to get on those buildings downtown.
The town didn't stop any of that. The only thing that we stopped was marking in the missed utility tickets, because in the places where they were gonna cross our roads or our property, they needed the permit for.
But how are they going to go north on 213 and south on 213? I mean, how are they going to get broadband to downtown, to here?
To go north on 213, that's not in this plan.
Okay.
The only thing the initial thing that they were coming to do was to run a trunk line from where Maryland Broadband Cooperative has a point of access at the intersection of Hope Road and 213, and carry that through town to where they've already run their trunk, the rest of that trunk line from actually across from McDonald's outside of the town limits. They've already run from there down to Route 50 or Y Mills, wherever it ends up.
So to be clear, nothing they're attempting to do right now would even provide broadband service to the downtown area.
They have the agreement that they're allowed to pull their own trunk line in with this. Where they're gonna pick up their actual point of access, I have no clue, because it's not included in their plan that they submitted.
Is there, there's really nothing we can grant them here, right? The town, there's really nothing the town,
No, Sharon can answer it better than I can.
Give the right for them to go on private property.
okay.
And it sounds like that's what they need.
Okay.
We don't control the state highway.
Okay.
The town is not at all the barrier to broadband access in town.
No, it's not even a little bit.
Anything else?
That's it in a nutshell.
I appreciate this timeline very, very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Thank- We'll move to reports. Thank you, Kip. Reports of boards and commissions, Maryland Municipal League.
Nothing particular to report. The reservation opportunities for the summer conference have opened up.
Council of Governments,
Nothing to report. We meet again in March.
Park Advisory Board.
Nothing to report. They're not meeting this month.
Planning Commission met in work session last night to revisit the comprehensive plan, the draft of the comprehensive plan. There is, a feeling that perhaps the planning commission should be just giving it, a once over and really making sure that their priorities are reflected in the plan from the standpoint of growth, both residential and commercial, and reacting to the comments that were received at the public hearing for the first public hearing for the comprehensive plan. I want to encourage everybody to attend the second and final, I think, hearing for the comprehensive plan, which will be Wednesday, the 15th of February, here in this building at 7 o'clock. And bring your comments. The plan as currently drafted, not reflecting any edits from last night, is on the town website. There's also a 6-page executive summary of the comprehensive plan draft on the website. So please look closely at those. There's growth projections for the town. There's an expanded town boundary. There's employment opportunity zones, all kinds of things. So bring your opinions to this room, 7 p.m. Wednesday, February 15th. We'll move to reports of department heads. We'll start with the town manager.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've talked water, wastewater to death, and I've talked through MDE. Last summer, I talked to you about electricity, and that in July of this year, our contract, a 4-year contract for electricity through a third party will expire. At that point in time, we started getting a number of individuals contacting us and pressing us to sign a new contract, at which time our advice to this council was to wait, that there was a great deal of volatility in the market, and it was extremely expensive at the time to wait and see what the market did. And it has come down, particularly some ones that hit us the highest. And then with one of the providers we've talked to, their rate, we were expecting at least a doubling, if not a little bit more in rates based on the way the market was happening. We met with the folks in Easton who can't provide us with power, but have a lot of expertise and in fact have a team that buys futures. And they graciously donated time, and we talked to them to understand what we were up against. One of the recommendations out of that was to look into standard offer services, which would be buying directly on a quarterly basis from Delmarva Power locally here. So we met with them to kind of get their take on what we were looking at, what we were considering, and the idea of standard offer services. And they were incredibly candid and said they'll beat our price. And so we've gone back to the two that were the best. One of them has come in, and we'll be looking at, instead of doubling our electricity in the new contract, probably 25 cent to maybe 50% increase.
What's the current rate per kilowatt hour?
0.477, no, 0.0477.
4.77 cents.
Yes.
Yeah. So this would make it 90?
So we were looking at 0.09. We were looking at 9.5 cents is what we're looking at, sometimes up to around 12 cents. The latest is coming in around 6 cents. So it's not the dramatic increase. And the one that was a little bit higher, we kind of threw him the email to said, what do you think? Can you do it? So we're just going to see who comes back to us with the best bid. But we still have time on our contract, so we are still continuing to watch the market and looking at these contracts. But we're also to a point where the way the volatility is, nobody is saying the rates are going to really come down from that we're not going to get back to where we were before. So that's kind of where we are as those prices solidify and we see who's at. I'll come to the council with a recommendation. And with that, I know Chief of Police will be next. Chief Hobbs is out. He is unwell. Do you have anything to add, Lieutenant? Okay. Over to you, Sharon.
I have nothing.
Finance officer?
I have nothing.
I don't think we have anything more from town staff.
All right.
I do.
All right.
Or you do. Go for it. Yeah, this is fun. This
Town
is
clerk.
good.
I just have some fun facts, real quick, and a announcement. So we started a year ago on our cleaning days, and I just wanted to report, I did a report on what we've been able to scan, that sort of thing. This is only for me, town council stuff, minutes, ordinances, resolutions. This isn't any other departments. So far, we have scanned in 4,342 pages, 75 years of minutes for a town council, 34 years of ordinances and resolutions, and in scanning, I just wanted to bring up a little fact that I shared with the department heads that I found in the minutes, that the council in 1934 received a letter from the Department of Health that they needed to install a wastewater treatment plant, which was $34,500 in 1934. So, yeah, so, just some little fun facts. But also, the other day, I created a web form on our website under planning and zoning for anyone to submit a code violation. And that
There
is.
now.
It's really kind of cool because we can pull reports from it, you know. I have check marks on there. They can always be added, changed, but the reports can be pulled from there of, you know, what was submitted.
Everything that we're hand
Everything.
jamming now
Yeah.
will now just be pulled into a report that if you have access to the back end, let's say you're a council member and you're interested in code violations and you have access to the back end, you can go in and see the reports that are being submitted and generated.
Yeah, so just wanted that, the form went up the other day. Today I just got the emailing of where the forms, couldn't quite get that right, but I finally got it right this afternoon, so yeah. That's all I have.
Can we send a town email blast so that people know that that exists?
Yep.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Nothing else.
Citizens Forum.
I just had a quick question on the one resolution, which was 03/2023. And it's talking about the town attorney. I thought that Sharon was like a contractual position. Is she an employee of the town, or?
No, which is why the resolution removed her from that list, because it didn't make sense to have her there because she's not an employee of the town. So if it's in brackets, it's removed.
Yeah, in brackets, it's
Well,
deleted.
it's not really in brackets, it's in bold.
It's in bold inside brackets.
What's that?
It's bolded and in brackets.
Yeah, the first entire sentence in
Well,
section.
the brackets are started with the town manager, so
Right.
I was confused.
She's now treated as a contract
Okay.
consultant. Yeah.
She's always been like that, right?
Yes.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
We thankfully don't have need for a full-time town attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Roundtable, Mr. Beecham,
Nothing here today, thank you.
Mr. Worth,
Nothing from me.
Ms. Kaiser.
Nothing.
I yield back my time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.